want to do is open up Rhino, and I'm going to put in the background image first. So I'm going to go to my top screen here, and then the other thing I'm going to do is, since these are in probably millimeters, I'm going to change my unit settings by going down to the bottom. And then switch over here. We'll go to millimeters. I'm just turning off some of these panels so we can. Okay. So then the first thing I'm going to do is get in here, and I'm going to rename, start setting up the layers. And I'm going to use background BKG floor plan. I'll be in the top here. I'm going to make that one active by double clicking on the checkbox there to make that active. Then I'm going to go here, opening up onto that little down arrow, and then I want to go background bitmap, and I want to place it. And it's going to pull up a file. Going down to the desktop. And I'm just going to place it. If you guys have questions, raise your hand and Eric and Byron will come around. Okay, the other thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to hit enter because I'm fine with where it's at. But I am going to turn off I'm turning off my show grid. I just typed in grid. There. That's good. So now we can see that between here we have something that we can now scale this to. So to scale it, we do a very similar thing. So we go to background bitmap, and scale, and it's going to ask origin points. So I'm going to say right down here, I'm going to click on that intersection. And the other thing I'm going to do is turn on ortho down at the bottom. I'm just going down here to the bottom, clicking on that to make sure that I get these straight lines. So it makes it a little easier. Then I'm going to line this thing up. And then I'm just going to type in, so that gives me my 2 reference points, and now it's asking me where my last one is. So I'm just going to type in now the dimension, which is 1100. Okay. Now we're going to zoom out. And now we have our plan all set. Now the other thing that I would do is you'll notice that it's not centered on our origin. The origin is now in this corner, which isn't necessarily a bad place to start, but I would say that it's always good to maybe start the origin maybe down here in this area here. So again, just one more maneuver here going into the background bitmap, and we're just going to move it. So I'm going to click down here close to this corner, try to get it, click on it once, and then I'm just going to type 0, 0, 0, and that's going to put it back at the origin. So now it's lined up on that corner, as you can see. So that's good. Now we've got the top, so I'm going to double click back here, and we've got that top set up. You'll notice that once we have it in the top, it's not actually showing up in these other backgrounds. And so what's nice about that is that actually means that we can put in other backgrounds for these other dimension or these other views. So we're going to go to the front view here. Now we're going to put in those elevations that we downloaded. So following the same procedure again, just click down here, background bitmap, place. Then we're going to say we're looking for the elevations this time. And I'm going to put down here, we're going to go from there. Just drag out a box that we're going to rescale later. Just hit enter. So the other thing now we can do a couple of things. So let's move this first, background bitmap, move. We're going to select this corner and we're going to set that up at the 0, 0, 2. Zero, comma, 0, comma, 0. Put that there. Now we have this dimension here, 3130, that we can scale off of. So that'll be helpful. So again, go to the down arrow up at the View tab, background bitmap. This time we're going to scale. And now we know the origin point is at 0, so we could just say 0, type in origin point 0. We can zoom in here. Look at that. and then we can just go up and type in 3130, hit enter, and then we're going in the direction that we want that to scale. Then we just click on there, and that has scaled it. So now we have the scales of the elevation. Okay. So now we can do some simple things here. So let's go into our top view. So this is 13,500 by 6,600. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, just to test this out a little bit, is let's make a box. So let's go over to our standard tab here, and then let's just go to box here. And we know this is the 0 point, so I'm just going to type in 0 as the origin. And then I want to get rid of, I think, ortho, because that is not working really well for me. Come over here, click. Then I'm going to come up to the corner again, double tap so that I can get out of that. And we know that this is supposed to be 3130, so we can type in 3130. Bam. So now, if we're looking at this, we zoom in and make sure. And this is why we do this, because now we see that there's a little bit of a scaling issue between the two of them, right? $13.5. $13.5. Okay, so what I'm gonna type is distance, DI, and it starts to come up, but STANCE, distance. And so that will allow me to measure things. So I'm going to come over here, click this, and then click just on this end, and we're 13,250. Okay, so what that tells us is that this image here is actually not scaled correctly. It has the wrong aspect ratio, so that means we have to scale it in one dimension to get the dimensions correct. So what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to scale this box so that it has the correct dimension. Okay, and we're going to do that by coming down here in the bottom of our standard panel, and we're going to click on this flyout, and we want scale 1D. Okay. Then we're going to click down at this corner, which is our origin point. Then we're going to click at the end. Then we're just going to move this over, and then we're going to type, we're telling it its direction, 13,500. Okay. And so now we're going to go back and click on the down arrow on the tab, background bitmap, Then we're going to scale this. Origin point is going to be 0. I'm going to zoom in here. Make sure ortho is turned back on, just in case. Okay, what the heck happened there? Alright, looks like we lost the background bitmap, so let's go back here and just put it back in. Come on, reindeer floor plan. We know the first corner we want is at 0, so we're just going to put that there. And we're going to move. So I'm just going to, you can, when you have this, while we're in an option, we can come up here and we can select up here in the these different options. So all those options here, so before we end it, we could click move, and it'll ask where we want to move from. So let's zoom back in here. Tell it we want to move from here. And we want to move that to 0. Okay. We want to scale. Just zooming in here. To that end. $6,600. So now that we have these elements on here, you can see how quickly we can start to build up from here the different curves. So once I have the backgrounds onto these and I have the basic setup, then what I will do is start to trace around the curves. So like in this section, I would start to note where I'm going to put the I-beams or the wide flanges, start to pull out the different exterior skin. So, and I would start to figure out how to model the rough shape. Now, modeling this interior is actually going to be, one of the more interesting things for you to do, and one of the more difficult things for you to do. But there's some hints that I can tell you about how to do this. So one of the reasons why I chose this one in particular is that the way that they showed how this is built is they actually used contours on the side in an elevation to show the topography. So these are actually contour lines. So if you think about this object in terms of a set of contours, like you would look at it as a site, this will give you the trick to figuring out how to build this. So if you take this, in addition to the section, you can start to get out the rough profile lines and start to look at the top. We can start to develop a series of curves. And what I would use when you do this is actually not this control curve, but this interpolated points. And the reason I would do that is because each of the points on an interpolated is right on the line where you're clicking. So if I click here, let me turn off ortho, and I click here, and I click here, you can see that it's already starting to align very nicely. Okay, so now let's do this with a control point. If I try to do the same operation with a control point curve, you can see that it's not accurate. It's off. So that would mean that I'd have to go back and edit those control points and move them around to make that happen. But if you just start off with an interpolated curve, interpolated points, then it's just going to fit the curve through those points. And you can see that whether or not where you need to add the next point to get the curve correct. Because if I go too far, you can see that it starts to fall below the line a little bit. Oops, too far. And so when curves start to happen that are tighter, the radius starts to get tighter, you need to have the points kind of closer together. And then as long runs, you can make them further. Okay? So the way you would start to do this, the way I would recommend you starting to model is to start out with a set of base curves and start to work in terms of here's my bottom curve, and then each one of these seats we can see another curve. So this outside line of this line of this curve here is going to line up with our first lines here, right? So we can move that curve up to that section, and we have the starting point for that. We can do that with each of those steps, and then we can start to add the pieces in between, additional curves to start to understand its shape, and then we can loft between those. So it's a very simple set of kind of giving yourself some curves to guide what you're doing, and then building up this piece in a sequence. So it's probably not going to be all one operation. It's probably going to be a couple of surfaces that you start to patch together. And we'll go over that in a little bit more depth. And I'll go into using blocks. So when we use the wide flange beams, columns here, we can build those up as blocks, which then are instances that allow us to make one change to one of them, and it will change all of them together. So anytime we need to go back and modify, it makes it much more robust. So Wednesday we'll go over modeling some of this outside, or I want to focus more on the blocks and the curves on the inside, building this seating, which is one of the more difficult pieces. So for Wednesday, what I would like you to do is model the metal shell. Okay, that should be pretty simple to do, to get that exterior shell modeled. And I want you to pay particular attention to these corners here, how this is built up. You can see that it's not a sharp knife corner, that it doesn't meet that corner nicely. So this is where paying attention to detail really pays off, okay? And that's where I want you to start, is get the rough shape modeled with good detail. And if you look at the front too, there's some interesting details about how it meets the ground. So you can see that it tapers back to a base before it hits onto a ground. For right now, don't worry about this line, this topography line. Just make sure that this bottom base extends down far enough that we could come back in and put that and intersect that with our topography that we're going to build in a little bit later. Okay? Any questions about the expectation to have for Wednesday? Should be pretty simple. Shouldn't take you too long. Okay? Any questions?